It's Cyclone Sunday with Ben Bruns. Breaking everything down from the Channel Seed Studios. This is Iowa Everywhere.
How about them Cyclones? Iowa State 42-41 over Miami. Pop-Tarts Bowl champions of the world. This is Cyclone Sunday. I'm Aiden Wyatt, joined as always by my man Ben Bruns. Brunsy, how we feeling this morning?
I'm good. You know what goes really well with Pop-Tarts? Milk and Pop-Tarts. And you know what the best Pop-Tart is? What's your favorite Pop-Tart?
A Victory Pop-Tart.
They do taste a little sweeter.
I'm a strawberry guy. I'm a classic. I don't know if it's my favorite, but that's what I've always had.
I love it.
What about you?
I'm allergic to strawberries, which sucks.
Oh.
It happened later in life. I don't know, but I'm a blueberry Pop-Tart guy. I like the classic fillings, right? I'm not into this like too sweet. Like it's not dessert, it's breakfast, right? So kind of classical. I like your style though. If I could eat the strawberries, I'd go there.
Well, I mean, is Pop-Tart, do they have real strawberries in them?
No, probably not, but I don't even want to chance it, right? It's not fun. It's not fun at all.
All right, let's get into it. I think we need to start with, the MVP, the Pop-Tarts Bowl MVP, Rocco Beck, 22 of 36, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. And, the biggest thing for me is at the end of the game, you just kind of knew he was going to find one last drive.
For sure.
To finish that thing off.
Mm-hmm. Here, I thought you were going to say the wild berry Pop-Tart was the MVP of the game. But I agree with Rocco too.
Yeah.
He just has this way of just keeping it working, right? And there was that third down play that he scrambled for the first down. And I remember looking at the defense thinking, this is not going to give us what we like. I mean, the defense had good position. It was well balanced. It was not something that we were going to be able to attack really easily. I remember thinking before the snap, like, man, I hope a situation opens up where he can scramble for this because I think that'll be open. But, like, I don't see where he can go with the ball right off the start of this play. And ball snapped, and there we go, right? And, his poise, how he escaped the pocket a couple of times when pressure was coming. And then, there was the play where he didn't throw it downfield, right? So he scrambles out after 2 guys were on him, and he ends up running it for like a yard. And my family was like, man, why didn't he throw it? But if you look at all the pursuit that was behind him, he had no way to know whether or not there was somebody that was going to, hit his arm, grab him from behind. Like, he couldn't tell what was behind him as he was getting out of all that. And I just remember thinking, that's a super heady play, right? Because there had to have been somebody open down the field. Like, the play took so long to develop. There had to have been something there. But, like, if you don't know, what you can't do is turn it over in that spot, right? So he's scrambling around and he's running out down the left side. And he never pulls it back. And I'm like, huh. But then I thought about it. I'm like, he had no clue. And those guys they had to have been close to him, right? So I just think it's those things that we don't even see generally, right? Besides the leadership and besides the mentality and besides the, just the show up and keep coming after it. Well-deserved MVP. I thought Gabe Burkle probably was going to be my MVP pick until those last couple of series. That touchdown catch he had to start the game. I mean, what a weird game start. After 3 series, what we know is Miami's hitting home runs because we're not run fitting out of the secondary and tackling, right? We know that they're going to spot us 7 to begin with, and we know it took 7 plays and almost 5 minutes for Iowa State to score from the 23-yard line. And you're like, ooh, I don't know that I love how this is setting up to start with, right? And you get into that 3rd and long situation, and Gabe Burkle catches this thing that is a dime. I mean, that throw from Rocco was fantastic. and Burkle hauls it in over his shoulder over two, double coverage. That was a great catch. And he had some really nice catches in that game. So, hats off to this whole football team. But, to your point, like Rocco, that sense of it's going to be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he got the ball at the end?
Going back to his scramble on third down, I think we need to talk about, I think it was Trevor Bohr. I hope I'm not wrong here. But he got beat off the snap and kind of got turned around a little bit, which is never a good sign for an offensive lineman. But he saved a sack. I think Miami sent someone off the edge that went untouched from the go.
Yep.
And he chipped him while he was in midair trying to tackle Rocco.
Yes. I saw that play. It's like, don't ever give up on what's happening, right? You never know. You can't fix what just happened. And so many times you see the worst thing you never want to see is an offensive lineman turned around facing the other direction. That means something bad happened, right? And so, for him to have the awareness and the mentality of like, okay, I can't fix that. He's out of any position where I can make a play on him. But I see this other thing, like I'm going to go try and get a piece of that guy, and then Rocco escapes. That was a big play.
Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Knoll obviously had a big day as well. 8 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown, almost 2 touchdowns. I saw our good friend Andrew Downs tweeted that they should take away video replay during bowl games and just the call on the field is what it is. Everyone just have fun.
Like, why are we even trying with this, right? I mean, that pass interference call was crazy. And the called him short. It's like, and then Rocco, like they said Rocco was down. I'm like, I just don't see how any part of his calf, that we like see on TV. The front of his leg, I just don't get it. But whatever, it's all good.
Anyway, a little more somber note here. Bo Freyler goes down pretty early in the game. That was heartbreaking.
I saw that play live happen, and I saw that guy crash into Bo's legs live, and I'm like, oh, no. Like, you see those plays every now and again where you're like, that could be a really bad deal. And more often than not, more times than I imagine, the guy gets up and he's fine. But you see these plays, and you're like, that could be bad. And sure enough, right, they put the replay on. You're like, man, that's MCL for sure, maybe ACL and cartilage, right? And the guy is wrecked up top, and but what Bo means to that football team, right, and to Cyclone Nation. Most of us who aren't close enough to the program to really have a sense, of what that mentality is and what that leadership is every day, we will only know because of how it's talked about, right? But for the guys inside the program, and when I talk to Ryan Harklaw about this, who sees it up close, he's just like, it's like he's an amazing guy, and so. He's going to hurt a lot later in life. Just like he hurts now, but he'll hurt more. But he never has to worry about did he do everything he could do. And I think that for most of us is such a huge part of things in all this. And, finalist for the Campbell Award, the academic Heisman. What an amazing award to be up for when you bring your hat that hard every single day, all the time, and you're that high level. A life well lived, right, to this point. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be fun to see what he accomplishes in his days to come.
Yeah, guys like him, I mean, certainly don't come and go all that often.
Yeah.
He's pretty one of one for Iowa State in terms of everything he meant to the team, everything he meant to this fan base, to just all around the coaching staff, everyone has something nice to say about Bo Freyler and his leadership for Iowa State football. Sticking with the defense, a lot of outside critique on the 3-3-5.
Somebody give me a stick so I can poke it in my eye so I can feel better. That's a Steve Loneyism, right? He was our offensive coordinator and offensive line coach back in the day. And I'm gonna borrow bad interpretation. Somebody give me a stick so I can stick it in my eyes so I feel better. You're like, Coach, what? Like, that must be bad. Yeah, that's what that was, right? Like, you get in the second half of that game, you're struggling to tackle from the second level, you're struggling to tackle from the secondary. And you know what I loved about Iowa State and how they played yesterday? Iowa State, for the most part, stopped the road grading. They stopped the ball movement. You know, really, the offensive line for Miami is okay, but they're not great. And so, you know, Iowa State's defensive front absorbed those guys and kept them from moving them down the field. The problem was that Iowa State never got tackling angles and never executed with what we've done so well for the last 5 years, 8 years, 6, 7 years of you know, being able to get to the edge of that guy while everybody stood up in the pile and get him on the ground. And, you know, that was certainly true. It cost us the game against, I think offense cost us a whole bunch of that game against ASU as well. But like you think about Scatterboo, like if Iowa State is tackling like they have in other parts of this era, that he never gets out of hand like that. So the 3-3-5 can work in that setting. But you're up against a team that doesn't have a quarterback that they can rely on in the second half of that game. And Dom Orange would absolutely tool that offensive line if he just had one gap to play. Peterson would dominate in a gap in that game. And so, you know, I kept wanting for us to bring a fourth defensive lineman in, penetrate, and cause some chaos in that offensive backfield so that they had to throw the football. Now, the good news is we still managed to get the tackles and get the guy on the ground and not give up the big play like we did on the second play from scrimmage for Miami in the game in that last drive and get a punt, right? Or second last drive. But, like, it was just maddening to see we're like into 2s and 3s across the board in the back end of the thing. And it's like, you've got to find a way to run fit differently so that, you know, this doesn't keep happening. And, you know, we stayed with it and we won the football game. So, but they also ran it for, what, 398 or something?
Something ridiculous like that.
Crazy. I'm going to eat a Pop-Tart and be soothed.
Only 308 yards, to be fair.
All right.
But, you know, the 3-3-5 really started with we need 5 DBs on the field because they're the best athletes on the team. That's kind of the origin of it. I don't know that that is necessarily the case anymore with this group, which obviously there's no disrespect there to anyone. But
no, not at all. I mean, it just has to do, in part, you've got guys sitting out too, right? You got guys hurt, you got guys sitting out, and you got linebackers hurt. So John Heacock can do no wrong in my world. 0, right? I think part of the evolution and part of the discussion going forward for Iowa State probably has to be, can we do both of these things, right? Can we play a gap system? Can we play a 2-gap system and be successful with both, right? Can we coach it up front? Can we run fit it? Do we have the personnel? Like, how can we do that in a way where it's not like ASU, where they just put their hand down on the ground and they're like, we're going to run it at you. And we're going to run it at you. We're going to run it at you. We're going to run it at you. And, you know, UCF, same thing, right? Same thing. They couldn't throw it from me across this kitchen. But, you know, they could run it for sure. And, you know, in those cases, being able to change how a defensive line plays and how they can control a gap is a valuable thing, but it is a very different set of techniques to be teaching than the techniques that Iowa State is coaching right now. And so nobody take that for granted in all this either. Just know that I was sitting on my couch going, can we bring one more guy in? Like, can we let Dom have a chance to just gobble up those guys? But or not gobble them up, but like penetrate, split them, right? So I think there's a lot of great days ahead for this Iowa State defensive look. I think we've got to get better than we were this year. I think the game has evolved enough to make it hard about the way we like to play. And the good news is we're going to have a great chance off the jump next year in Ireland to play a team that wants to run first in a conference game against K-State. And so we'll see. And they've got a dual threat quarterback who's really, really good. So, it's not the same situation as you're in a game against a quarterback that can't be relied on for the other team, and all they've got is running it and maybe getting lucky with a deep pass, which is what happened against UCF and what happened a little bit in this game with Miami.
Yeah, in an evolve or die world, I would put my money on John Haycock to evolve.
Oh, for sure. And look, it's already happened, right? We were the innovators, right? So now everybody else is caught up. Everybody else is doing the thing. And it's like, but it affects your personnel too. It affects the guys you're recruiting in the back end because you're recruiting safeties that can play the run really, really dynamically, and be a linebacker type hybrid guy. And, you can't evolve your personnel overnight either. So that may be part of it, especially with all the guys who are banged up. Depth at defensive line, being able to take a number of snaps and make it all the way through the game may have been a deciding factor about, look, we know we can do this, but we actually can't do it because we're not deep enough right now because Tyler Onyetam's not here. You just don't know. I think the effects of guys sitting out of bowl games and the transfer portal and all that is just fascinating, right? And, Miami's sitting there today saying, we would have won that game if Cam would have played the whole day, right? And Iowa State's sitting around saying, well, that might be fine, but, Higgins and Onyetam and, we don't have guys either, right?
And, Miami only led for 16 seconds for Cam Ward's first half. It's not like Miami was up by 30. I mean, I get they didn't play the second half, but let's not act like he was, killing he was
good point.
Killing Iowa State, but
good point.
The game wasn't over when he left, which I want to get your thoughts on this whole opt-out thing, specifically Cam Ward, because they talked about it a little bit on the broadcast. Will he stay in if it's a competitive game? Like, does your competitive edge kind of take over?
Why does he not play that last series? Are you serious?
I know.
That was crazy.
It would have been.
That was crazy.
Chris Williams said this. It would have been an all-time nut punch for Iowa State fans. Would have been pretty electric for Miami fans if you trot out Cam Ward on that last possession. Not going to lie.
Why not?
I'll say it. Yeah. But, yeah, anyway, I really want to get your thoughts on kind of this opt-out era of college football. And, I'm not going to drag anyone through the mud here.
Yeah.
Everyone is allowed to make their own decision, obviously. And it's more a sign of the times than anything from my perspective.
Well, I think a couple things. Number one, I think if you're a guy that your team is going to put a big insurance policy on, I think more power to you to play, right? Because if they're willing to do that, then your downside risk is really much more limited. Are you going to get that same opening contract that you would have otherwise? No, you're not, and that's a 3-year penalty in the NFL, generally speaking. But maybe you sign a 1-year deal coming in. Just be like, look, you can all see me play now. You need a quarterback, or and so I'm going to work out for you, but I'm only signing a 1-year deal, right? As a free agent, you can do those kinds of things. You don't have to take a 3-year contract. Most guys do, but I think if you're sitting there and you've already made a pile of money in college and you've already made a pile of money with whatever insurance policy came due because you got hurt, if you're Cam Ward, that's a different position to be in than Jaden Higgins, right? Because Jaden Higgins is in a position where he needs to perform well at the combine. He needs to perform well in the testing days. He needs to have teams see him work out for drills, right? Because
same with Darian Porter too.
Same with Darian Porter. You're right. Those guys are the exact same situation, right? So if they're injured, they never have an NFL career. And that's not like Iowa State or whoever is going to take a big policy out on those guys. Maybe there's a policy, but it's not the same thing as a guy who finished third for the Heisman, right? And I don't mean that to diminish. I just mean that's the world we live in, right? So for those guys, I just think the pressure is really high. Now, is it different than a regular season game? I don't know that it is, but what's different is the window in which you have time to recover before the workouts begin, right? Mm-hmm. From whatever injury might come to you. And so a late season injury is just as bad as a bowl game injury, right? And in my mind, as a fan and as a person who's spent a lot of my life around football, I think they are the same. Like, I think the regular season and the postseason both matter. But the difference is how much time you have to recover before you've got to get in front of scouts. And, so many more injuries of different varieties can cause you to lose that opportunity for an entire career in the NFL. And man, it is a moment in time. I mean, I never got into a camp. Like, how do you, I still can't explain it. Like, what is that? But it was circumstantial, right? And I was injured as a junior, and I ran a 40 I never should have run. And it was way slow. And I didn't even know about it until after I didn't get drafted. It was like, what do you mean? Like, I had a 5.8 40 time on the page, and nobody thought I could play? And then our senior year comes, and we're good. And it's like, well, that's what happens, right? So it's like, you can't have that bad test. You can't. Not if you're those guys, not if you're on the edge, not if you're from Iowa State. I mean, and we've got a bunch of good guys playing in the NFL. And NFL guys like Iowa State guys these days because of how tough-minded they are, how conscientious they are, how hard they work, how down-to-earth they are. They're consummate pros, right? Credit the staff. That's coming from the way the staff teaches and coaches these guys. But I'll tell you, it's like the circumstances all still have to line up the right way for you when you're in that edge. And maybe those guys can be, top 3 rounds, maybe, and that's real money and a real contract and real security for the rest of your life and a real shot to stay in the league for a while because teams have had to make an investment in you, right? If you get hurt, maybe you somehow get a free agent contract, but then you're an indentured servant for 3 years by the time, anybody can figure out what you can do, like Brock Purdy's done, right? And you get a big contract, hopefully. A lot of your career is already gone. And so I get it. I understand why those guys sat. And I think nobody should disparage them for that. I think it makes watching the game a little different. But in fact, it's kind of interesting, right? Because you got guys like Alston that come in and you're like, whoa, interesting. I like this,
Yeah.
And maybe that's what Miami was thinking in the last part of that game. All right, let's see what the freshmen can do, right? Because this is the future for us, right? Mm-hmm. Cam's not going to be here. So, we're going to let this go. We want it to go. And Cam may have very much been in that mindset of like, hey, it's his show now, right? I turned over the keys at halftime. And I got to be okay with that. And look, if that was the conversation that everybody had before the game started, I think there's no regrets out there. However, as I sat there and watched that, I thought to myself, oh gosh, I hope Cam Ward doesn't regret this later in life. Yeah. Because I would if I were in his shoes. But that doesn't mean he's me, right?
Mm-hmm. And, I don't know anything, but I'm guessing he wasn't the only one making that decision.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I'm guessing there was a group in his ear talking about his future. take it for what it's worth, but again, it's just a sign of the times. This is Cyclone Sunday here from the Channel Seed Studios. Ben Bruns, Aiden, Wyatt. Iowa State 42-41 winners over Miami, Pop-Tarts Bowl champions of the world. Brunsy, what did you think of, I don't know if pageantry is the right word, everything that went on Saturday afternoon with the Pop-Tarts Bowl? I mean, this is what bowl games should be about. I don't know what they did at the Insight.com Bowl.
It was nothing like that.
Some odd years ago.
Yeah.
They didn't have Pop-Tarts running around or anything like that.
No, you weren't born yet. So, so here's the deal. I've got one hold back from the Pop-Tarts Bowl. One. It's a person in a Pop-Tart suit climbing up on top of a 15 plus foot tall toaster with nothing more than a single handrail post to step onto, right? And their vision and peripheral awareness, their spatial awareness is limited.
It's got to be, you're not seeing much.
And they're standing there, right, about to go down into the toaster and to be turned into this wonderful gourmet dish that Matt Campbell can't wait to rave about afterward. Like, everything in his soul loves those moments where people are like, "Hey, here's this commercial interest you have to try and pitch. Do it now," right? Like, Matt hates that stuff, but it's like, I'm like, that was dangerous. Like that, if that Pop-Tart does a backflip off that thing, it doesn't mean to, right? It's an OSHA violation, right? That was a workforce violation. And I have a problem with it as a guy in the construction industry because fall protection and prevention is such a huge part of our world. I struggled. Once he started going down in the toaster, I'm like, oh, whew, thank goodness, dodged a bullet, right? And if Wildberry had been up there, oh man,
who knows what?
Watch out, right?
Wild card.
That dude would have been like, that guy or gal would have. Who knows, right? It might have ended up on the scoreboard. So it was tremendously entertaining, and I got texts from people that are not Iowa State fans, business associates, community leaders where we live, and it's like wow, there were a lot of people watching this game, and they know how much Iowa State means to my family, and they're like. Clicking me messages, and I would have never imagined to get that kind of a message. But, I think that is part of the magic of bowl games. I think that's the magic of everybody sitting around, and and this is the game to watch. And, I think there was some, my mother-in-law said this morning, reminded me the fact that there was a pundit early in the bowl season who said this is probably going to be the most entertaining game of the bowl season. And I think that is probably true up to this point. So I think it was great. And I was so happy to not be at that stadium in Orlando because it's not great. Like everything about the bowl is first class, the venue and the location. So the Pop-Tarts have brought a magic to that Camping World did not have.
Yes, absolutely. And Iowa State, I think we need to talk about this. There are no Pop-Tarts, to my knowledge, that are cardinal and gold. Say that they went with the cookies and cream uniforms, got the good juju. I'm all for alternate uniforms. I love the black uniforms.
Yeah.
I love splashing in the white.
I agree.
The Cyclone script is chef's kiss.
I agree.
One thing I want to talk about is how will you remember the 2024 Iowa State Cyclones?
Wow.
A lot of directions you could go here.
Yeah. That's a great point. I feel like it's a team that on so many levels, we never really got to see them play their best football, right? Even with an 11-win season, the winningest team in school history, because of all the injuries, because of the roller coaster ride that is a season, but especially one that starts with the kinds of injuries that Iowa State's started with. I don't know that we ever really saw the best Iowa State football could be coming into this season, given the background of all that. And isn't that amazing to be sitting here with the winningest team in school history, beating Miami, the storied program. And thanks, Chris Hassel, for your tweet of the screen cap of the comparison of the two programs over time. I was like, come on, thanks so much. The good news is we have great tap water, but that whole thing was sort of like, I don't really love this line of comparison, but whatever,
Why do they make Ames seem like this, small podunk farming community?
You couldn't have found a worse picture of a farm in your life.
That picture was 40 years old.
That picture's terrible. And it's so here we are talking about how great our farms are. At least let us show off like a normal farm, right? You got this snapshot of like this hay bale and like, what are we doing? It just intended to be a slap to the face.
There's 45 people that live in Ames, Iowa. They all go hang out at the cardboard box down the street on Thursday nights.
They play pool.
Yeah, that's all they do.
Stop. But look, I mean, they all have to have a narrative, right? And it didn't lack for entertainment value. It just isn't a fair representation of what draws people to Ames. And I think, the flip side of that is there is a lot to be said for the fact that the culture of the program draws people to it, right? And that's what you want. You want, people that are going to come wear that to care a little differently than, they might if they'd gone to somewhere else. And they do. And like the fact that this team stayed together this year, I go back to this time last year, right? And the promise of significant contribution from the athletic department was not really on the table for the collective. So these guys right here, who have the freshest gear around, by the way, like the quality of We Will merchandise, I've been floored by. Have you seen the sweatshirt with the embroidered Cy bouncing the basketball?
Yes. Yeah.
Dude, that thing, Clayton got that for Christmas. Like, it is awesome. And this hat is awesome. Like, people invested in this program to make it go for, and I don't mean to say that the administration didn't. What I mean to say is that other administrations had gone much, much further. And they were redirecting funds out of their Learfield contracts and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And now that the rules have changed and the schools can contribute directly, what I've heard is that Iowa State is about to make a huge investment in player compensation. And what a strange world we live in, right? That's the landscape but it just is. And so I'm glad that we're playing that ball, right? And I think that's a huge part of why we have coaches who are committed and want to stay here and sign contracts to go forward. But last winter, it was people who contributed to the collective that kept this team, and the work of Hoodger and Matt, yes, and right, and Bloomy, and all these guys having conversations with players to help them understand how important they were, but also how important the team was overall, right? And guys like Rocco turning down big money to go somewhere else, big money, and now they're going to get paid very, very well. But like Jim Larinaga talking about, your Final Four team, and then you got 8 people that come into your office, yep, and say, "Look, I'm going to transfer." Like, are you not happy? Well, I'm happy. That's and I'm not blaming anybody involved with it. It's all just, other than ESPN. ESPN sucks. ESPN sucks. But besides that, ESPN and the SEC suck. How about that?
Yeah, it was.
I don't even hate the Big Ten like I did, right? And they're as monopolistic as it comes. But
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tie in a few Matt Campbellisms here.
Okay, let's do it.
Ames, Iowa isn't for everyone, and that's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Because
right.
I think they've really approached the program with that, especially in this era of the transfer portal where if you don't fit us, we don't fit you, we'll move on. We'll get someone who does fit us.
Yeah.
And that's why, I don't want to get into recruiting a ton here, but, people like to look at recruiting rankings and stuff. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, screw their rankings, get your guy. Like, I don't care if they're ranked high.
Yeah.
You know that you got your guy.
Yeah. Well, look what TJ did, right? He went and built a team that have the right kinds of guys to fit inside of what we do. And, I think that that's Moneyball, right? Iowa State has to play Moneyball. And I think because we're never going to have the money that Texas has. So we put together and kept together a great football team. But we had a whole bunch of guys playing out there who – they're like second, third team guys on defense, and and guys that are still hurt and recovering from things. I mean, I'm sure Miles Purchase wasn't at his best yesterday, but he was out there playing. It is a different time, as you say, and Matt's right. What else you got?
The other one I had was, let me pull it up so I get this right. Hard to find teams still in college football, but we've still got one in Ames, Iowa. Which, I'll be honest, this doesn't look great on paper because you don't know the tone of it.
Yeah.
But what his point is, in this era of NIL and transfer portal, there's a lot of individuals out there.
Yeah.
A lot of people looking to get what's best for them.
Building a collection of individuals, right?
Yep.
And that's maybe that's what Bill Belichick is going to do, and he's going to be good at it, right? I mean, a lot of people have said, what's he doing in all this? But actually, the playing field has become much more like what he's used to.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree with that. I think he'll do great at UNC. But the culture at Iowa State and everything...
Really different than that, right? Really different than what we just talked about.
Yep. It's the we over me. It's trust in the process. We talk about this senior class all the time. And I think on our last show, we talked how this senior leadership group, I think, was a lot different than the 21 class, where they won a lot of stuff and they had a lot of prestige. Yep. They never really had a bad season, but this senior class, you deal with the gambling stuff and then a 4-8 season.
Yeah.
Guys like Darian Porter, who have been around forever, cut their teeth on special teams, and now he's an NFL guy. You talk about guys like Jalen Knoll as well. He's an all-time Cyclone. He quietly became the second in receptions in Iowa State history. He's all-timer in a Cyclone uniform.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right about it being quiet, right? It was just sort of like, oh wow, that was he made another play. Wow, another great conversion, right? Like those sneaky third down conversions, throwing touchdown passes, right, on trick plays. I mean, we ran one in the game, and it was like, wasn't there. He pulled it down and got 4 yards, right? It's like, I think one of the things that is interesting about that whole arc, though, is the fact that if you look at the recruiting rankings over time, we've steadily improved in that arena. And so, even though these guys had this more up and down, more rebuild sort of experience, they actually, in most cases, were more highly recruited, more highly sought after than that group that won the Fiesta Bowl. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, there were some, blue chip dudes in that, right? But Brock Purdy came down to the wire, and he sort of slipped through the cracks of some great programs. I mean, Alabama wanted him to sit on their bench because they didn't want Texas A&M to have him. Texas A&M, got it. They understood. But they were Texas A&M, and so there's just a difference in how people feel in and around all of that. And the feeling with Matt Campbell and Ames was so different, right? And so we had Real Mitchell was already in Iowa State's camp, right? Real Mitchell was going to be the probably the next big quarterback for Iowa State, and Walters was gone. He was doing a basketball tournament. We were doing the signing day event, and this was back in Brock's class. And I emceed the event, and I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of these guys' tapes to be able to do that justice with the staff. And Matt specifically told me, he's like, don't talk about Brock much. It's like, he's a late add to the class. Just do us a favor, just downplay what this might mean and who we were recruiting him against. And so we did, right? I mean, he came into the class right at the last minute. Real's there at the event. I think it was a very respectful way to look at. Nobody knew what the future was going to be at that moment in time. And, the last thing Matt wanted to do was trump a guy who was already in the program, already working with the team, doing the right stuff. But I think he knew in the front of his mind, not the back of it, that Brock Purdy was probably going to be the dude, right? And so, as that all played out and the season went on and, Brock got his chance to play against Oklahoma State. I was actually a little bit surprised he hadn't played earlier in the season based on what I knew coming into that, right? And then what you were hearing coming out of the camps. And so, you fast forward a few years and you have all that success that group built, and then you're building off of it. And so this class that came in, they were there were a lot of guys that were like, yeah, this is like so I think it's true, but I wouldn't put the arc of this class as some sort of underdogs. I would put the arc of this class as like the formula's figured out. We already know what it is we're after. We're recruiting higher level guys. The expectations are so much higher, right? So now we've got to deal with the expectations that are so much higher. And 4-8 felt like the world had ended, when in reality, it's like, yeah, that didn't really go our way. We've got some stuff we got to fix. There's a couple of warts on this. We got to, get those cut off and rebuild that culture the right way. And these guys have done it, right? And they've done themselves proud. They've done Iowa State proud, but they never failed, even that 4-8 season, right? Like that's the problem that everybody, certainly there were things that the staff, looked at and said, we have to change and like we have to grow as people and all of that. But like even your failures, everybody's failures in life contribute to their triumphs. And so I just think this program's in a great place. It's going to be different next year. We have no idea what to expect other than we know that Rocco, is a guy who will lead the right way. And, how interesting that Rocco's not a captain on this team, right? But yet, one of the true quintessential leaders. And so I think, I bet he'll be a captain on next year's team.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. In the words of the great poet Taylor Swift, it's the end of an era, but it's the start of an age. And what I mean by that is it feels like... Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Twitter is going to love this, by the way.
We talk about the 21 class. They were, the first Big 12 title game in school history. They win the Fiesta Bowl. They have all these firsts of their own. And then I think the 4-8 season happens, and everyone kind of goes, well, they caught lightning in a bottle with Brock Purdy. And now you win 11 games. I get you win the Pop-Tarts Bowl. It's not quite
the Fiesta Bowl.
The Fiesta Bowl.
Although the pageantry was it was way better, frankly, because there was literally no one in the stadium. Yes. I couldn't even be on the field for the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think you nailed it with this is kind of the prove it era of Iowa State football these last 3 years.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of prove, well, it wasn't lightning in a bottle. You actually had one off year. And even that off year, you're 5-10 plays away from winning 7 or 8 games.
Yes.
You know?
And that's how I felt in that year. I felt like, look, this is a correction. It's something that probably needs to happen, right? There are things that, you can become protective and entitled over things, that were the way that you did them or that, were how things were. But, like I was never, to me, it was always like, look, this is a long game and it's going to be okay. And I, even in the midst of that 4-8 season, I never believed that, we were out of games substantially or that we had some huge flaw in what we were doing. There's some things that needed to improve in a number of areas, right? Like if you think about what really has improved the last couple of years, our offensive line play has improved a lot, right? It really has. And so, our tight end room, even minus Bramer, who's such a great threat, is had a great season. And there were other guys that were hurt too, right? It's not like, but who we're going to miss? We're going to miss Steve Klotz a lot, like a lot more than anybody is talking about, right? And there's a bunch of guys that we're going to miss, but guys like that make all this stuff go. And Jalen Travis comes in and has a great year. Neal was in there playing, an extra, heavy at times, right? There's just guys that maybe you don't think about today that are going to be the ones that are like, ooh, man, that's a harder replacement than what we thought. But you're right about the transfer portal era. And I think, I was having a conversation the other day. It's like I always put all these guys in the NFL, but they've never faced the transfer portal era before. And like they're 78th in transfer portal performance right now. This is not good, And so even for as good of talent evaluators for young guys coming out of school as the Hawks have been, it's like this is a different time. And keeping guys in your program is as hard as getting them in the first place. And then, developing them and, none of us know what this looks like in 2 or 3 years. Heck, the playoff may look very different next year. You just don't know. And clearly the SEC thinks, and Kirk Herbstreit think that it should just be SEC and Big Ten teams. Maybe just SEC teams. Like, well, just,
It's a conference tournament.
So crazy, right? Like, what's so great about Alabama this year? Other than beating Georgia, like, I don't know, right? It's like.
And, if Arizona State beats Texas, well, it's because Texas used to be a Big 12 team. Like, they're not SEC quite yet. I can tell you, I was all hot under the collar about Tennessee and why was Tennessee so highly rated all season. Look at their games, look at who they've played, look at who they lost to, look at who they beat that was upper echelon. It's like, I don't understand why that's so much more compelling than BYU's season. I just don't get it. Yep.
Like, I don't get it. So it's about money, right? And it's about the marriage between the SEC and ESPN, billions of dollars, right? And so that when the SEC struggled this year, which the SEC struggled this year, with the exception of Texas coming in to kind of bolster the whole thing, like it's because a lot of their guys are getting paid to play elsewhere, right? That they were paying under the table before. And now everybody else can give them a little bit of juice and we're all square.
Right. One question I had for you. This was kind of funny on the postgame show last night. Eric Heft, our guy, said, I don't know if it's the best team in school history, but they certainly have the most wins Iowa State's ever had. And then they sent it to the locker room with Hark and Campbell, and Campbell goes, well, this is the best team Iowa State's ever had. So what do you think? Is this the best team in school history?
I I wondered about that last night, and I wondered if we were going to talk about it, right? And I don't think I'm the one to judge that. I don't know that, like, and I've never liked the fact that people judged us on the Insight Bowl team as better than or lesser than the great teams of earlier eras, right? I never liked that. I didn't think that was fair. I mean, at the time we had the most wins in school history, right? And so, like, that was the thing that was a sure thing. Guess what? This team has the most wins in school history, for sure, right? And so I don't know that you can say who's better. I will say this. I could tell you that team that won the Fiesta Bowl would have beaten us my senior year, right? I'm convinced of that. That was a really, really, really good football team. I don't know what to think about this one because I don't feel like they ever had the chance to play their absolute best football, right? And so if Matt thinks they're the best ever and he coached, the team that I had thought was the best in school history in the modern era, then credit to him about that, right? He's closer to it than me. I just know that it's the most wins that we've ever had. And, I think the way they won left lots to chance, but they won. Mm-hmm. And I think that, that is the hallmark of a champion, right? And so how's that for an answer?
I love it. That's what makes all of this so interesting is they won 11 games, but I don't know that you can pick out one game where it's like, yep, that's the game where they were really complete. Maybe West Virginia. I think you could say Baylor was probably their best win.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this game yesterday was along those lines, except for the tackling, from the linebackers and secondary in a lot of the game, right? Where I've seen Iowa State just gobble teams up and tackle them like, they never had a chance. I do believe that there are other Iowa State defenses that we're used to seeing that would have experienced tremendous success when coupled with this offense, because this offense was much more functional than some that we had, in several years ago, right? 2-3 years ago. This was a much more complete offensive football team. And that's where the fault and special teams, right? Like, I mean, think about how we were undone with special teams going back to that Oklahoma championship, right? So you can't look at Iowa State special teams this year and say that there was a huge flaw somewhere. I mean, I didn't love getting the fake punt yesterday. I felt like the way that situation started, I actually was like on the couch screaming, watch the fake, right? Because like they ran on the field super fast.
Yep.
The snapper was obviously in a weird position. It was like something is not right here, right? But at the same time, I still trust our guys to be in the right gaps and to make plays that it takes to stop that kind of stuff. But besides that, like that's nitpicking, right? But that was the difference between a punt and a touchdown. And so again, the game's close, right? But this team had such better special teams than even going back to 2020, where we gave up those huge kick returns, right? I mean, OU had a massive field position advantage in Iowa State in that game. You take that away, to me, that's the best team in school history, right? But you can't give up those giant chunks of yardage in the return game like Iowa State did that season and expect to beat an OU team that was loaded. So, yeah, it's a fun thing to talk about. Coach is closer to it than any of us, and so we'll tip the cap to him about that assessment. But certainly the winningest team in school history, and frankly, one that has given us a lot of pride and a lot of frustration, right? There was a lot of heartburn watching some of these games. Like, oh my God, we could just put them away. We could just stab them and kill them right now, you know? But I think the result at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know how guys in that locker room feel. I kind of wish we had that ASU game back again with healthy linebackers and, you know, being in a little different place. But, you know, you can't. So we'll cheer them on against Texas and see what happens.
Yeah, that's about all I got for football talk here. I do want to take a second to say thank you to everyone who tuned in all season long.
Yes.
And thank you, Brunsy, for making me look like a genius.
Likewise, Aiden. I appreciate it, man. It's been fun.
Go ahead.
Legit, like, you know, for those that watch our show, we're really grateful. It is, you know, it's never easy to break games down, especially when, you know, there are things that you see that can be better. And I just want everybody to think again about the fact that every single person at every moment along the way in all of this is trying to do the best they can, right? From you know, players to coaches to parents to, you know, to staff to fans to you and I, and you know, so talking about this stuff is fun, and it is a game, and it is you know, something that enriches our lives and makes us happy and makes us you know, brings that extra heartbeat, right? And so, you know, I appreciate what you bring to this, the positivity, and it's fun. It's fun working with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And of course, thank you to Chris Williams for giving us this awesome platform.
For sure.
Here at a locally owned company in Iowa everywhere.
That's right.
I think that'll do it for the 2024 season. Iowa State, once again, 42-41 winners over Miami. This has been Cyclone Sunday. For Ben Bruns, I'm Aiden Wyatt. Have a happy holidays, and we will see you next season.